When hotel heiress Eleanor Worthing defends a janitor at a glittering gala, she doesn't realize she's just challenged everything her world is built on, especially when he turns out to be more than anyone imagined. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The main ballroom of the Worthing Grand Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the flash of diamond jewelry. Eleanor Worthing stood by her father's C-Day, wearing a navy blue designer gown that matched her eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled into a perfect updo, not a strand out of place. She smiled and nodded as investors and business partners approached, playing her part as the hotel heiress. "Eleanor, darling," her father Charles Worthing said, his hand on her shoulder, "the Bradleys are here. I want you to make sure they feel special tonight." Eleanor nodded, her smile never wavering. "Of course, father." At 58, Charles Worthing had built an empire of luxury hotels across the country. The Worthing name meant excellence, perfection, and wealth. And as his only child, Eleanor knew her job was to reflect all of that. "Mr. Worthing," a booming voice called. Eleanor turned to see Gerald Bradley, one of her father's biggest investors, approaching with his wife and son. "Gerald, Patricia," Charles greeted warmly, "and James, good to see you again." Eleanor knew what was coming next. Her father had been trying to push her toward James Bradley for months now. He was handsome, wealthy, and from the right family. On paper, he was perfect. "Eleanor," James said, taking her hand and kissing it, "you look stunning tonight." "Thank you," she replied politely, though she felt nothing when he touched her. No spark, no interest. Just another business arrangement in her carefully managed life. As they made small talelke, Eleanor's eyes drifted to a figure moving quietly along the wall. A man in the hotel's maintenance uniform was carefully adjusting one of the air vents. What caught her attention wasn't that he was working during the gala, but how he moved, with purpose and dignity. Unlike the other staff who tried to blend into the background, this man carried himself with quiet confidence. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark skin. His face was serious as he concentrated on his work. And when he finished, he scanned the room briefly. For just a moment, his eyes met Eleanor's. There was no awe there, no intimidation, just a clear, direct gaze that seemed to see past her perfect appearance to something else. Then he nodded slightly and continued on his way. "Eleanor, are you listening?" James asked, touching her arm. "I'm sorry," she said, turning back to him. "What were you saying?" The night continued as these events always did. Champagne flowed, business deals were discussed, and Eleanor played her role flawlessly. But several times, she found herself looking for the maintenance man, watching as he moved through the room, fixing things that no one else seemed to notice needed fixing. Later, as Eleanor was getting another glass of champagne, she overheard a conversation from a group of investors standing nearby. "Did you see that janitor eyeing the Worthing girl?" one of them said with a snicker. "The black guy?" "Yeah, walking around like he belongs here," another replied. "Probably thinking he's got a shot with her," a third added, and they all laughed. "Imagine a janitor thinking he belongs among royalty," the first one said, raising his glass, "to knowing your place in the world." Eleanor felt her body go rigid. The words hit her like a slap. Before she could think about what she was doing, she turned to face the group. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear and cold. "That man works harder than anyone in this room. He belongs here more than any of you." The room around them fell silent. The investors stared at her in shock. From across the room, Eleanor could see her father's face turning red with anger. "Miss Worthing," one of the men stammered, "we were just joking around." "Well, it wasn't funny," Eleanor replied. She set down her champagne glass and walked away, her heart pounding. As she crossed the ballroom, she caught sight of the maintenance man again. He was standing near a side door, and from the look on his face, she could tell he had heard everything. He gave her a small nod before disappearing through the door. The fallout was immediate. "Have you lost your mind?" her father demanded when he cornered her in his office after the gala. "Do you know who those men are? The investments they control?" "They were being cruel," Eleanor said. "For no reason. Who cares? He's just a janitor, Eleanor. You embarrassed this family. For him." Eleanor felt something inside her break loose. 25 years of doing exactly what was expected of her, of being perfect, and suddenly she couldn't remember why. "Maybe this family needs to be embarrassed once in a while," she said quietly. Her father stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You will apologize to those men tomorrow, and you will not speak to that maintenance worker again. Is that clear?" Eleanor didn't answer. She simply turned and walked out of the office. The next morning, her phone was flooded with text messages and social media notifications. Someone had recorded her confrontation with the investors and posted it online. Most of the comments were mocking. "Poor little rich girl thinks she's so noble. Daddy's princess has a thing for the help." Elena Worthing's charity case. Her closest friends called not to support her, but to ask what she'd been thinking. "Your reputation, Eleanor," her friend Vanessa said. "What about your image?" By afternoon, only one person had reached out with actual support, her cousin Rebecca, who lived on the other side of the country. "About time you stood up for something real," Rebecca's text read. "Proud of you." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She put on jeans and a simple sweater, clothes she rarely wore, and took the elevator down to the hotel. At 2 a.m. the building was quiet. She knew the night maintenance crew would be working, and she needed to find him, to warn him about the video, to apologize for the attention she might have brought on him. She found him in the empty restaurant, carefully repairing one of the booth seats. "Excuse me," she said softly. He looked up, not seeming surprised to see her. "Miss Worthing." "Eleanor," she corrected him. "I'm sorry to bother you while you're working. I wanted to apologize." He stood up, and she realized how tall he was, at least 6 inches taller than her. Apologize for what? "There's a video going around of what happened last night. I wanted to warn you that it might cause some problems." He studied her for a moment. "I'm Devon Marks." "Nice to meet you, Devon," she said, extending her hand. He okayed it, his grip firm and warm. "I appreciate the warning," he said. "But I'm not worried." Eleanor tilted her head. "You're not?" "No," Devon said simply. Then he added something that stunned her. "I didn't take this job because I needed it. I took it because I wanted to see if anyone saw me when they thought I was nobody." Eleanor stared at him. "What do you mean?" Devon put down his tools and gestured to a nearby table. "Do you have a few minutes?" They sat, and Devon told her his story. He hadn't started with nothing. He'd built everything from nothing. After putting himself through college with scholarships and 3 jobs, he'd developed a software program that revolutionized supply chain management. He sold it for millions, then invested in real estate and tech startups. Now, at 29, Devon Marks was worth more than most of the investors at last night's gala. "So why work as a maintenance man?" Lena asked, fascinated. 2 years ago I was engaged," Devon explained. "I thought she loved me for who I was. Then I found out she'd researched me before we even met, knew about my wealth, planned the whole relationship. After we broke up, I started questioning everything. Who saw me as a person and who just saw my bank account?" He looked at her directly. "So I simplified. I take jobs where people don't look too closely. I observe, and I learn who's our eel." Eleanor felt her cheeks flush. "And what have you learned about the Worthing Grand?" Devon's smile was small but genuine. "That it's run efficiently, that most of your staff are treated well, and that the owner's daughter has a surprising amount of courage." "I don't know about that," Eleanor said. "One moment of speaking up doesn't make me brave." "It does when it costs you something," Devon replied. "And from what I've seen today, it cost you quite a bit." Eleanor was silent for a moment. No one in her world measured actions by their cost, only by their benefit. It was a completely different way of seeing things. "I should let you get back to work," she finally said, standing up. "Will you be in trouble for talking to me?" Devon asked. Eleanor smiled ruefully. "I'm already in trouble, might as well make it worth it." Over the next few weeks, Eleanor found herself drawn to the hotel during Devon's shifts. They would talk for a few minutes here and there, about books, about travel, about life. He told her about growing up in a small apartment with his grandmother who raised him. She told him about the loneliness of boarding schools, and the pressure of being Charles Worthing's only heir. "You don't have to be what they expect, you know," Devon told her one night as they stood on the hotel's rooftop garden. "I've never been anything else," Eleanor admitted. "Dee, I wouldn't know how to start." "You already have," Devon said. He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "The night you spoke up. That was the real Eleanor." The touch of his fingers against her skin sent a warmth through her that she'd never felt before. Eleanor realized with sudden clarity that she was falling for him, not for his hidden wealth or his success story, but for his steadiness, his perspective, the way he made her feel seen. Meanwhile, her social circle had shrunk dramatically. Her invitations to parties dried up. Her father had barely spoken to her in weeks, except to remind her that she was throwing away everything he'd built by continuing her ridiculous rebellion. Eleanor didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt real. One evening, as they shared coffee in the empty hotel bar after his shift, Devon asked, "Why did you do it? That night at the gala, you didn't know me." Eleanor thought about it. "Because they were wrong," she said simply. "The way they talked about you, about anyone, like people are just their jobs or their social status. I've been surrounded by that my whole life, and suddenly I couldn't stand it anymore." Devon's eyes softened. "Do you know how rare that is? To stand up for someone when there's nothing in it for you?" "There was something in it for me," Eleanor said quietly. "I got to be honest for once." Devon reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was so natural, so right, that Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes. "I should tell you," Devon said, his voice serious, "I'm not planning to keep this job much longer. I have projects that need my attention." Eleanor felt a pang of disappointment. "So you'll go back to being Devon Marks, millionaire businessman?" "I never stopped being him," Devon said. "But yes, I'll return to that life. The question is..." He looked at her intently. "What will you return to?" Before Eleanor could answer, the bar's lights suddenly came on full brightness. They turned to see Charles Worthing standing in the doorway, his face a mask of fury. "This ends now," he said coldly. "Eleanor, upstairs, immediately. And you," he pointed at Devon, "you're fired. Get out of my hotel." Eleanor stood up. "Father, you can't..." "I can and I will," Charles C. cut her off. "This has gone far enough. I've let you have your little rebellion, but I won't have my daughter throwing herself at the maintenance staff." Devon stood up calmly. "Mr. Worthing, with all due respect..." "I don't want to hear it," Charles snapped. "Security will escort you out." Eleanor watched helplessly as two security guards appeared. Devon gave her one last look, steady, unafraid, before walking out with them. "How could you?" Eleanor asked her father, her voice shaking with anger. "I'm protecting you," Charles replied. "You'll thank me later." "No," Eleanor said firmly, "I won't." She turned to leave, but her father grabbed her arm. "Where do you think you're going?" "To find him," Eleanor said, "to apologize for how he was treated." Charles's expression hardened. "If you walk out that door, you're choosing him over your family, over everything I've built for you." Eleanor looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never noticed before. Fear. He was afraid of losing control, afraid of losing her. "I'm not choosing him over you," she said gently. "I'm choosing myself." Then she walked out, leaving her father standing alone in the empty bar. Outside the hotel, the night air was cool on her skin. Eleanor looked up and down the street, but Devon was already gone. She pulled out her phone, then realized she didn't even have his number. All these weeks of talking, connecting, falling for him, and she had no way to reach him. As she stood there, feeling lost, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the coffee shop around the corner. D." Eleanor smiled. Of course he would find a way. He always did. As she walked toward the coffee shop, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years. She had no idea what would happen next, but for once in her life, she was eager to find out. In the warm light of the small coffee shop, Devon waited at a corner table. When he saw her walk in, his serious expression broke into a smile that made Eleanor's heart skip. "You came," he said as she sat down across from him. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Eleanor asked. Devon shrugged. "You have a lot to lose." Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand. Maybe I'm finally ready to find out what I have to gain. The next morning, Eileen woke up in her penthouse apartment feeling different. She stood in front of her walk-in closet, filled with designer clothes, and felt suddenly suffocated by all the excess. She pushed past the formal dresses and business suits, searching until she found a simple pair of jeans and a white button-down shirt. As she dressed, her phone kept buzzing. Her father had called 12 times overnight. There were also messages from the few remaining friends who hadn't abandoned her yet, all asking variations of the same question. Have you come to your senses? She ignored them all and opened the one message she cared about, from Devon. Breakfast at West Side Diner? 9 a.m.? Eleanor smiled. The West Side Diner was about as far from the Worthing world as you could get, a small, family-owned place where the coffee was strong and the waitresses called everyone honey. When she arrived, Devon was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He was dressed differently, not in the maintenance uniform she was used to seeing him in, but in dark jeans and a simple grey sweater that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He looked relaxed, comfortable in his own skin. You look different, he said as she slid into the booth across from him. Eleanor touched her hair, which she'd left loose instead of in its usual perfect style. Good different or bad different? Real different, Devon said. Devon, with a smile. I like it. A waitress came over, calling them both sweetie, and pouring coffee without asking. Eleanor found herself loving the simple interaction, so different from the formal service at her father's hotels. So, Devon said after they ordered, what happens now? Eleanor took a deep breath. I don't know. My father is furious. I've never defied him like this before. Do you regret it? Devon asked. Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him. His dark eyes were steady, his expression open but guarded. She realized he was giving her an out, a chance to go back to her old life. No, she said firmly. I don't regret a thing. Devon's smile was worth everything she might have lost. I want to show you something, he said after they finished eating. If you have time. I have all the time in the world, Eleanor replied. It was true. She had nothing scheduled, no obligations. The feeling was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Devon drove them out of the city in a modest sedan, not flashy but well-maintained. I thought you were a millionaire, Eleanor teased, looking around the practical car. I am, Devon said with a shrug. But a car just needs to get you from one place to another. Why waste money on something just to impress people? It was such a different mindset from everything Eleanor had been raised to believe that she fell silent, thinking about how many things in her life were chosen solely to impress others. They drove for about 30 minutes until they reached a construction site on the edge of the city. A sign out front read, Mark's Community Center, opening spring 2025. Mark's? That's you? Eleanor asked as they parked. Devon nodded. My first big project after I made my money. Come on, I'll show you around. Inside, the building was taking shape. Wide hallways, large rooms with tall windows, a gym, classrooms, and a commercial kitchen. I grew up in this neighborhood, Devon explained as they walked. My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. There was nowhere safe for kids to go after school, no resources for families struggling to make ends meet. He showed her a large room with computer stations. This will be the technology center. Free classes, internet access, career development, resources. His face lit up as he described his vision, and Eleanor saw a side of Devon she hadn't seen before. The successful businessman, the visionary, the leader. He was so much more than he'd let the world see during his time at the hotel. Why didn't you tell me about all this sooner? She asked as they stood looking out over the neighborhood from the building's roof. Devon leaned against the railing. Would it have mattered? The night we met, would you have defended Devon Marks, millionaire philanthropist, the same way you defended a janitor? Eleanor thought about it. I'd like to think so, but honestly, I don't know. I've never had to defend someone like that before. That's why I didn't tell you, Devon said softly. I needed to know if someone could see me, just me, without all this. He gestured to the building around them. And did I pass the test? Eleanor asked, a hint of hurt in her voice. Yvonne turned to face her. It wasn't a test, Eleanor. It was self-preservation. The last woman I loved only saw the bank account, not the man. I couldn't go through that again. The word loved hung in the air between them. Eleanor felt her heart beat faster. And what do you see now? She asked, taking a step closer to him. Devon reached out and brushed his fingers along her cheek. I see someone brave enough to walk away from everything she's known. Someone who's just starting to discover who she really is. Eleanor closed the distance between them, and Devon's arms went around her waist. When their lips met, it wasn't like the formal, emotionless kisses she'd shared with the men in her social circle. This kiss was real, warm and honest and full of promise. Later that day, Devon dropped her off at her apartment building. I have meetings tomorrow, he said, but I'd like to see you again soon. Eleanor nodded dead. I'd like that too. As she rode the elevator up to her penthouse, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text from her father. We need to talk. Dinner tomorrow night. The house, 7 p.m. Eleanor sighed. She knew she couldn't avoid him forever. I'll be there, she texted back. The next evening, Eleanor arrived at her childhood home, a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. As the housekeeper let her in, Eleanor noticed how stiff and formal everything felt. Had it always been this way? Her father was waiting in the dining room, a glass of scotch in his hand. At 58, Charles Worthing was still an imposing figure, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that matched Eleanor's own. You're late, he said, as she sat down across from him. I'm exactly on time, Eleanor replied calmly. Charles studied her for a moment. You look different. Eleanor had purposely dressed simply, black pants, a blue silk blouse, minimal makeup. I am different. The housekeeper served their meal in silence. Eleanor could feel the tension building as they ate. Finally, Charles set down his fork. I've given you time to get this rebellion out of your system. Now it's time to come back to reality. This isn't a rebellion, Father. This is me figuring out who I actually am. Charles's expression hardened. And who exactly is that? Because the Eleanor I raised understood her responsibilities. She knew her place in this family, in this business. Maybe that's the problem, Eleanor said quietly. I've always known my place because you decided it for me. But what if I want something else? Something else like what? A romance with the hotel janitor? Charles scoffed. Don't be naive, Eleanor. Men like that only want one thing from women like you. Eleanor felt anger rise in her chest. You don't know him at all. I know his type, Charles insisted. He saw a rich, vulnerable girl and took advantage. He's not who you think he is, Eleanor said, then immediately regretted her words. Charles leaned forward. What does that mean? Eleanor hesitated. Devon's secret wasn't hers to tell, but maybe if her father knew the truth, he'd back off. Devon isn't just a maintenance worker, she said carefully. He's successful in his own right. Very successful. Charles's eyes narrowed. Explain. He's a tech investor and real estate developer. He's worth millions. He was working at the hotel to see how people treated him when they thought he was nobody. Charles stared at her for a long moment, then let out a short laugh. And you believe this story? Eleanor, he's obviously lying to impress you. He's not lying, Eleanor insisted. I've seen his projects. He's building a community center on the east side. He sold a software company 3 years ago for millions. Charles went still. What did you say his last name was? Marks. Devon Marks. Eleanor watched as her father's expression changed from disbelief to calculation. He pulled out his phone and typed something, then scrolled through the results. Devon Marks, he read aloud. Founder of Supply Sync, sold to Amazon for $75 million in 2021. Currently CEO of Marks Innovations and director of the Marks Foundation. He looked up at Eleanor, his eyes suddenly interested. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? The shift in her father's attitude made Eleanor's stomach turn. Because it shouldn't matter, she said. You fired him and threatened me because you thought he was just a janitor. Finding out he's rich doesn't change how wrong that was. Charles waved his hand dismissively. Of course it changes things. If he's legitimate, that's a completely different situation. Different how? Eleanor challenged. Well, for one thing, he'd be a suitable match for you, Charles said, as if it were obvious. For another, the Worthing hotels could benefit from a connection to someone like him. Tech investments, modernization. We've been looking to expand in that direction. Eleanor stood up, unable to sit still any longer. So now you want to use my relationship for business? Just like you've tried to use me for every other business SS connection? Don't be dramatic, Eleanor. I'm trying to make the best of this situation. This situation, Eleanor repeated. You mean the situation where I finally found someone who sees me as a person and not a business asset? Charles stood too, his patience clearly wearing thin. Enough, I'm willing to overlook your behavior these past few weeks. I'll even reach out to Marks myself, apologize for the misunderstanding. No, Eleanor interrupted. Why you will not contact him? This is my relationship, not a business opportunity. Don't be foolish, Charles snapped. Everything in life is a business opportunity. That's what I've tried to teach you. Why do you think Marks was working at our hotel in the first place? He was obviously studying the competition, gathering information. That's not who he is, Eleanor insisted. Everyone has an angle, Eleanor. The sooner you accept that, the better. Eleanor L. looked at her father, really looked at him, and felt a wave of sadness. Is that what you really believe? That everyone is just using everyone else? That there's no such thing as genuine connection? I believe in being practical, Charles replied, and practically speaking, Marks is now an acceptable option. I'm offering to smooth things over. Most fathers wouldn't be so understanding. Understanding? Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. You're not understander. Nung anything. You're just seeing dollar signs where before you saw a threat. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? Charles demanded. Away from here, Eleanor said. I need to think. Eleanor, her father called after her. Don't walk away from me, we're not finished. But Eleanor kept walking. In the driveway, she called a rideshare instead of taking her own car. She needed time to process what had just happened. As the CAR drove through the city, Eleanor stared out the window, her mind racing. Her father's instant change of heart, once he learned about Devon's wealth, confirmed everything Devon had been afraid of. People only saw what they wanted to see: money, status, opportunity. She directed the driver to a small park near the bay. It was dark now, but the area was well lit and there were still a few people around. Eleanor sat on a bench overlooking the water and called Devon. Hey, he answered, his voice warm. I was just thinking about you. My father knows, Eleanor said without preamble, about who you really are. There was a pause on the other end. You told him? I had to, Eleanor said. He was saying terrible things about you, about your intentions. I thought if he knew the truth, he'd back off. But instead, now he approves, Devon finished for her. Worse than that, Eleanor said. Now he sees you as a business opportunity. He wants to smooth things over so the Worthing hotels can benefit from a connection to you. Devon was quiet for a moment. And how do you feel about that? Disgusted, Eleanor said honestly. Disappointed but not surprised. This is who he's always been. I just never saw it clearly until now. What are you going to do? Devon asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan, but I know I don't want to go back to being who I was before. Then don't, Devon said simply. Where are you now? Bayview Park. Stay there, I'll come get you. 20 minutes later, Devon's car pulled up. Eleanor got in, suddenly feeling exhausted. Want to talk about it? Devon asked as they drove. Eleanor shook her head. Not right now. Can we just go somewhere quiet? Devon nodded and drove them to a modern apartment building downtown. My apartment was on the top floor, spacious but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nice place, Eleanor said, looking around at the clean lines and comfortable furniture. It was nothing like the formal showpiece homes she was used to. It's home, Devon said. He went to the kitchen and poured them both a glass of water. You can stay here tonight if you want. I have a guest room. Eleanor looked at him gratefully. Thank you. I don't think I can face my apartment right now. Everything there feels like someone else's life. They sat on his couch, talking quietly as the city lights twinkled below them. Devon told her more about his childhood, about his grandmother who had raised him with love, but very little money, about working his way through college, about the idea that had become supply sink. "After I sold the company, I didn't know what to do with myself," he admitted, "or with all that money. It didn't feel real." "I can't imagine that," Eleanor said. "I've always had money, I've never known anything else." "That's why I started the foundation," Devon continued, "to give kids from neighborhoods like mine a chance, and then I met Alicia." Eleanor tensed slightly at the mention of his ex-fiancée. "She was beautiful, smart, ambitious," Devon said. "I thought we connected on a real level. It wasn't until after I proposed Ed that I found out she'd researched me before we even met. She knew exactly how much I was worth, had planned the whole relationship." "How did you find out?" Eleanor asked softly. "Her phone," Devon said. "She left it unlocked one day. There were messages to her sister from before we met, talking about how she'd found a target and was going to land the tech millionaire." Eleanor reached for his hand. "I'm so sorry." Devon squeezed her fingers gently. "After that, I started questioning everything. Who saw me as a person and who just saw my bank account? That's when I decided to simplify. I took jobs where people wouldn't look too closely at me. I watched and learned." "And then you met me," Eleanor said. Devon smiled. "And then I met you, who defended me when you thought I had nothing to offer you." Eleanor moved closer to him on the couch. "You had everything to offer. You were the first person who ever saw past my last name, past my father's hotels, past all of it, to me." Devon brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm still seeing you," he whispered. When he kissed her this time, Eleanor felt something she'd never experienced before, a sense of coming home, of being exactly where she belonged. Later, as Devon showed her to the guest room, Eleanor felt shy suddenly. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Devon smiled. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's a new day." In the morning, Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee. She borrowed a t-shirt from Devon's dresser to wear over her clothes from the day before and padded out to the kitchen. Devon was at the stove, making pancakes. "Morning," he said with a smile. "Sleep okay?" Eleanor nodded, accepting the mug of coffee he handed her. "Better than I have in years." They ate breakfast together, talking easily about nothing important. It felt so normal, so right, too. Had Eleanor found herself wishing the morning would never end, but reality intruded in the form of her ringing phone. Eleanor looked at the screen and sighed. "It's my father." Again. "You should answer," Devon said. "You'll have to talk to him eventually." Eleanor took a deep breath and picked up. "Hello, Father." "Eleanor, where are you?" Charles demanded. "I've been calling all night." "I'm safe," she said simply. "I needed some time to think." "Well, while you've been thinking, I've been doing damage control," Charles said. "I've spoken to the board. We're prepared to offer Mr. Marks a formal apology and discuss potential collaboration opportunities." Eleanor closed her eyes, fighting for patience. "Did you not hear anything I said last night? This isn't about business." "Everything is about business," Charles insisted. "You think your Mr. Marks doesn't know that? Why else would he take a job at our hotel? He was studying us, Eleanor, gathering intelligence." "That's not true," Eleanor said, though a small seed of doubt planted itself in her mind. Why had Devon chosen the Worthing Grand specifically? "Bring him to dinner tonight," Charles continued. 8 o'clock, we can start fresh." Before Eleanor could argue further, her father hung up. She set down the phone, a frown creasing her forehead. "Let me guess," Devon said. "He wants to make amends now that he knows I'm worth knowing." Eleanor nodded. "He wants us to come to dinner tonight." Devon studied her face. "You're considering it?" "No," Eleanor said quickly. Then, more honestly, "I don't know. Part of me wants to just cut ties completely, but another part wants to believe he can change," Devon finished for her. "I understand he's your father." Eleanor looked at him gratefully. "Would you hate me if I wanted to go? Just to see if there's any hope?" Devon shook his head. "I don't hate easily, and I never want to come between you and your family." He paused. "But Eleanor, be careful. People like your father. They don't change overnight. I know, she said softly, but I have to try. That evening, they arrived at the Worthing mansion together. Eleanor had gone home to change, opting for a simple black dress rather than the designer labels her father was used to seeing her in. Devon wore a well-tailored suit that managed to look both professional and relaxed. Charles was waiting for them in the formal living room, a smile plastered on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Marks," he said, extending his hand, "I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I want to personally apologize for the misunderstanding." Devon shook his hand firmly. "No need to apologize, Mr. Worthing. I wasn't exactly forthcoming about my situation." Charles gestured for the EM to sit. "Well, now that we all understand each other, I think we can move forward productively." Eleanor tensed at the word productively. It was one of her father's business terms. "I've done some research on your work, Mr. Marks," Charles continued. "Very impressive. Your supply chain software revolutionized inventory management, and now you're moving into community development?" "Among other things," Devon said neutrally, "the Worthing Hotel Group has been looking to modernize our operations," Charles said, "and we're also interested in expanding our corporate responsibility initiatives. Perhaps there's room for collaboration." Eleanor watched as her father shifted into full business mode, pitching Devon as if he were any other investor. Devon listened politely, asking appropriate questions, neither encouraging nor discouraging the conversation. When they moved to the dining room, Charles had the housekeeper bring out his best wine. "A 2015 Bordeaux," he said. "I've been saving it for a special occasion." Eleanor couldn't help but notice that just days ago, Devon had been thrown out of the hotel by security. Now her father was serving him $500 bottles of wine. Throughout dinner, Charles continued his charm offensive, praising Devon's business acumen, asking about his foundation work, even mentioning how refreshing it was to meet someone who understood the value of hard work. "Self-made men like yourself are rare in our circles, Mr. Marks," Charles said. "Most of Eleanor's social group have never worked a day in their lives." "Please call me Devon," Devon replied smoothly. "And I think you'd be surprised by how many people work hard, regardless of their starting point." Charles nodded, though Eleanor could tell he wasn't really listening. Of course. Now about that technology initiative I mentioned." "Father," Eleanor interrupted, "could we not talk business for one evening?" Charles looked at her in surprise. "I thought Devon would be interested." "I'm interested in getting to know you," Devon said diplomatically. "As Eleanor's father, business can wait." Charles seemed momentarily thrown, but recovered quickly. "Of course, family first. That's always been my motto." Eleanor nearly choked on her wine. Family had never come first for Charles Worthing. The business had always been his priority. As the evening went on, Eleanor watched her father work harder and harder to impress Devon. It was a side of Charles she'd seen many times before, but always directed at people he wanted something from. By the time dessert was served, Eleanor couldn't take it anymore. "Father," she said, setting down her fork, "why are you doing this?" Charles looked at her in confusion. "Doing what?" "This," Eleanor gestured around the table. "3 days ago, you called Devon a janitor and had him thrown out of the hotel. You told me I was embarrassing the family by speaking to him. What changed?" "Eleanor," Charles said warningly, "we've moved past that unfortunate incident." "Have we?" Eleanor pressed. "Or is it just that now you know Devon is rich, suddenly he's worthy of respect?" "That's enough," Charles said, his mask of geniality slipping. "You're being rude to our guest." "I'm being honest," Eleanor countered. "Something this family could use more of." Devon placed his hand gently on hers under the table, a silent show of support. Charles took a deep breath, visibly composing himself. "Mr. Marks, Devon, I apologize for my daughter's outburst. She's been under a lot of stress lately." "Don't do that," Devon said quietly but firmly. "Don't dismiss her feelings or speak for her. Eleanor is perfectly capable of expressing herself." Charles stared at Devon, clearly not used to being contradicted in his own home. "I've known my daughter her entire life. I think I understand her better than someone who's known her for a few weeks." "Do you?" Eleanor asked. "Because I don't think you know me at all, Father. You know the version of me that fits into your plans. But that's not who I am anymore. Charles's expression hardened. And who are you now? This rebellious, ungrateful person who throws away everything I've built for her. I'm just me, Eleanor said simply. For the first time in my life, I'm figuring out who that is. And I'd like you to be part of that journey, but not if you can't accept me as I am, not as who you want me to be. A heavy silence fell over the table. Devon squeezed Eleanor's hand gently. Finally, Charles spoke, his voice cold. I see. Well, if that's how. You feel perhaps we should end the evening here. He stood up. It's been enlightening, Mr. Marks. Devon stood as well, maintaining his composure. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Worthing. Eleanor rose, disappointment washing over her. She'd hoped for something different, some sign that her father could change, but he was who he'd always been. Good night, Father, she said quietly. As they walked to the door, Charles called after them. Eleanor, a word Al1, please. Eleanor looked at Devon, who nodded. I'll wait in the car, he said. When they were alone, Charles dropped all pretense. Is this really the path you want to take? Throwing away your heritage, your position, everything I've worked for? I'm not throwing anything away, Eleanor said tiredly. I'm just trying to live authentically. Authentically, Charles repeated with a scoff. Did you pick up that word from him? Listen to me, Eleanor. Men like Marks come and go, but family, business, that's forever. Eleanor looked at her father sadly. You still don't understand. This isn't about Devon, it's about me finding out who I am outside of your shadow. And if I don't approve of this journey of self-discovery? Charles asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. Then that's your choice, but I'm making mine. She turned and walked out the door, leaving her father standing alone in the grand entrance hall L of the mansion that suddenly felt more like a museum than a home. In the car, Devon waited patiently. When Eleanor got in, he didn't immediately start the engine. You okay? He asked softly. Eleanor looked back at the house where she'd grown up, feeling a mixture of sadness and liberation. No, she said honestly. But I will be. As they drove away, Eleanor felt as though a chapter of her life was closing. What came next was uncertain, but for the first time, that uncertainty didn't terrify her. She looked over at Devon, his profile illuminated by the dashboard lights. He glanced at her and smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first caught her attention. What? He asked. Nothing, Eleanor said. I'm just grateful I found you. Or maybe that you found me. Devon reached over and took her hand. Maybe we found each other. As the city lights blurred past them, Eleanor realized that despite everything, her father's disapproval, the uncertain future, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The next morning, Eleanor woke up in Devon's guest room again. She'd been too emotionally drained after the dinner with her father to face going back to her own apartment. Devon had simply handed her the same t-shirt she'd borrowed before and told her to stay as long as she needed. As she made her way to the kitchen, she heard Devon's voice. He was on the phone knee, his tone serious and businesslike. A side of him she was still getting used to. I understand the concerns, he was saying, but I'm not interested in postponing the community center opening. The neighborhood has waited long enough. No, that's not negotiable. He looked up as Eleanor entered and gave her a warm smile, even as he continued his conversation. Look, we can discuss this at the board meeting tomorrow. For now, the timeline stays as is. He hung up and set his phone down. Good morning, he said, his voice softening. Sleep okay? Eleanor nodded, accepting the mug of coffee he offered. Better than I would have at my place, thanks for letting me stay. Anytime, Devon said. My home is always open to you. There was something in the way he said it that made Eleanor's heart beat faster. It wasn't just politeness, it was a genuine offer of sanctuary. I should probably go back today, she said reluctantly. I have things I need to deal with. My father's probably already called the hotel board members about you. Devon leaned against the counter. Does that bother you? That he's trying to use our relationship for business? Eleanor considered the question. What bothers me is that he can't see past business, even when it comes to his own daughter. Devon was quiet for a moment. My grandmother used to say that people show you who they are, not by their words, but by their actions in moments of pressure. Your grandmother sounds wise, Eleanor said with a small smile. She was, Devon replied. She would have liked you. Would have? Eleanor asked gently. She passed away last year, Devon said, just before the community center project broke ground. I wish she could have seen it completed. Eleanor reached for his hand. I'm sure she'd be proud of you. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, drinking their coffee. Eleanor found herself marveling at how easy it was to be with Devon. No pretense, no performance, just genuine connection. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. Eleanor looked at it and frowned. Something wrong? Devon asked. It's my cousin Rebecca, Eleanor said. She's warning me that there's a story breaking online about us. She quickly pulled up a news site on her phone. There it was, front and center on the business. Sales section, Hotel Heiress and Secret Millionaire, the unlikely romance. The article included a photo of them leaving her father's house the night before, side by side. Another showed Devon in his maintenance uniform at the Worthing Grand, and a third showed him in a business suit at a tech conference. How did they find out about you? Eleanor asked, looking up at Devon. He took the phone and scanned the article. Someone leaked it. The question is who? Eleanor didn't need to think hard. My father. He's the only one who knew the whole story. Devon nodded. Makes sense, he'd want to control the narrative. Eleanor read further into the article, which painted her as a modern-day princess who had fallen for a man she thought was a janitor, only to discover he was secretly a tech king worth millions. This is horrible, she said. They're making it sound like some kind of fairy tale, like the only reason our relationship matters is because you turned out to be rich after all. Devon's expression was grim. That's exactly what your father wants people to think. That way he saves face. Instead of his daughter falling for a maintenance worker, she spotted a diamond in the rough. Eleanor felt sick. I'm so sorry, Devon. This is exactly what you were trying to avoid by working at the hotel. People seeing only your wealth, not you. Devon set the phone down and took both her hands in his. Hey, look at me. This doesn't change anything between us. You saw me when you thought I had nothing. That's what matters to me. Eleanor squeezed his hands gratefully. What do we do now? We go on with our lives, Devon said simply. I have meetings today I can't reschedule, and you should go home and take care of whatever you need to. Let's not let this change our plans. Eleanor nodded, though she felt uncertain. Once she stepped outside, everything would be different. The bubble they'd been living in for the past few weeks would burst. An hour later, Devon dropped her off at her apartment building. I'll call you later, he promised. And Eleanor, remember who you are, not who they say you are. As Eleanor rode the elevator up to her penthouse, she steeled herself for what was coming. Sure enough, her phone was flooded with messages. People who had ignored her or mocked her after the gala incident were suddenly reaching out with warm congratulations and invitations. Vanessa, who had been her supposed best friend before cutting her off completely, had texted 5 times, OMG, why didn't you tell me? He's gorgeous. Call me ASAP. We need to catch up. Lunch tomorrow? Eleanor deleted the messages without responding. Inside her apartment, the blinking light on her landline showed 27 messages. She played the F. Cast few, board members from her father's company, social acquaintances, even her old etiquette teacher from finishing school, all suddenly remembering her existence now that she was dating a wealthy man. The irony wasn't lost on Eleanor. These were the same people who had mocked her for defending Devon when they thought he was just a janitor. She deleted all the messages and sat down on her couch, feeling suddenly exhausted. The quiet luxury of her apartment felt different now. Cold, staged, like a museum piece rather than a home. It looked like the life of someone she used to be. Her phone buzzed again with an incoming call. It was her father. After a moment's hesitation, Eleanor answered, What do you want? Is that any way to greet your father? Charles asked, his tone artificially light. Especially after I've done you such a favor. A favor? Eleanor repeated incredulously. You leaked our story to the press. How is that a favor? I controlled the narrative, Charles replied, as if it were obvious. Now, instead of people thinking my daughter threw herself at the help, they see a charming story about you recognizing quality, regardless of appearance. It's good PR for everyone. It's manipulation, Eleanor said. And it's exactly what Devon has been trying to avoid, people only valuing him for his money. Charles sighed. Eleanor, be practical. His Monai is part of who he is, just like our family name is part of who you are. There's no shame in acknowledging reality. The reality is that you had him thrown out of your hotel when you thought he was nobody, Eleanor said. And now you're trying to rewrite history because he turned out to be somebody you can use. Use is such an ugly word, Charles replied smoothly. I prefer collaborate with. And speaking of collaboration, the board is very interested in meeting with Devon formally. I've set up a dinner for Friday night. You did what? Eleanor asked, her anger rising. Without asking either of us? It's a business opportunity, Eleanor. For both of you. Devon gets access to our hotel chain for whatever technology he wants to implement, and we get the benefit of modernization. Everyone wins. Except you didn't bother to ask if that's what Devon wants, Eleanor pointed out. Or what I want. What you want, Charles said, his voice hardening, is to secure your future. Marx is a good match, ambitious, self-made, and now publicly linked to you. Don't mess this up with your newfound independence kick. Eleanor felt her blood boil. My relationship with Devon is not a business arrangement. Everything is business, Charles replied. Even love. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be. I'm happier now than I've ever been, Eleanor said, and it has nothing to do with business deals or social status. It's because for the first time I'm being true to myself. Charles was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost sincere. Eleanor, I know you think I don't understand, but everything I've done, building this company, creating our family's position, it's all been for you. So you would never have to struggle, never have to worry about your place in the world. Eleanor felt a pang of sadness. In his own way, her father did love her. He just didn't know how to love without controlling. I appreciate that, Father, she said, but I need to find my own way now. Just come to the dinner on Friday, Charles said. Bring Devon, that's all I'm asking. After they hung up, Eleanor sat for a long time, thinking. Part of her wanted to call Devon immediately and warn him about her father's plans, but another part wondered if there could be a way forward, a way for her father to accept Devon, and for Devon to see that not everyone in her world was shallow and status-obsessed. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at her door. Eleanor opened it to find a delivery man with a huge bouquet of white roses. Eleanor Worthing? He asked. Yes, she replied, confused. She hadn't ordered flowers. These are for you, he said, handing her the bouquet and a small envelope. Inside the apartment, Ina set the flowers on her coffee table and opened the envelope. The card inside read simply, Remember who you are. D. Eleanor smiled, touching the soft petals of the roses. Just when she needed it most, Devon had reminded her of what mattered. She picked up her phone and called him. Hey, he answered. I was just thinking about you. Thank you for the flowers, Eleanor said. They're beautiful. You're welcome, Devon replied. How are things on our end? Eleanor sighed. Chaotic. Everyone who abandoned me is suddenly my best friend again. And my father called. He set up a dinner with the hotel board on Friday night. He wants us both to be there. Devon was quiet for a moment. What do you think we should do? I don't know, Eleanor admitted. Part of me wants to refuse on principle, but another part wonders if this could be a chance to bridge the gap, to show my father that our relationship is real, not just some business opportunity. If it's important to you, I'll go, Devon said. But Eleanor, don't expect your father to change overnight. People like Charles Worthing see the world through a very specific lens. I know, Eleanor said. I just don't want to close the door completely. He's still my father. Then we'll go, Devon said simply. Together. The rest of the week passed in a blur of unwanted attention. Photographers followed Eleanor when she went out. Old social connections suddenly reappeared, with invitations and overtures of friendship. Even James Bradley, the man her father had been pushing her toward before, called to catch up. Eleanor ignored most of it, focusing instead on something she'd never prioritized before, figuring out what she actually wanted from life. For years, she'd gone along with her father's plan: business school, a position on the hotel board, charity appearances, and eventually marriage to someone from the right family. But none of that had been her choice. Now, as she spent time with Devon, she began to see other possibilities. His passion for his community center project was contagious. The way he talked about creating opportunities for others made her wonder what she could do with her own privileges and resources. On Thursday evening, Devon invited her to dinner at his apartment. When she arrived, he was in the kitchen cooking. "I didn't know you could cook," Eleanor said, impressed by the delicious smells filling the apartment. Devon smiled. "My grandmother made sure I could take care of myself. Nothing fancy, but I can make a decent meal." As they ate, Devon told her about his day. Meetings with contractors at the community center, a conference call with investors, plans for a new tech startup he was funding. "You're so passionate about your work," Eleanor observed. "I've never felt that way about anything." Devon looked at her thoughtfully. "What would you do if you could do anything? If your father's expectations weren't a factor?" Eleanor considered the question. "I don't know. I've never really thought about it. The hotel business was always my future. It wasn't a choice, it was just expected." "But if you could choose," Devon pressed gently. "I've always loved art," Eleanor said slowly. "In college, I minored in art history, but my father said it was just a hobby, not a career path." She smiled ruefully. "He called it my fancy finishing school subject." "Art history," Devon repeated. "That explains why you knew so much about that painting in the hotel lobby, the one you told me about during one of our late-night talks." Eleanor nodded, surprised he remembered. "The Douglas Turner piece. Yes, I've always been fascinated by how art reflects society, especially works by artists from underrepresented backgrounds." "So why not do something with that?" Devon suggested. "Your family has connections to museums, galleries, collectors." "As a career, you mean?" Eleanor asked. The idea had never occurred to her as a real possibility. "Why not?" Devon shrugged. "Life's too short to spend it fulfilling someone else's dreams for you." After dinner, they moved to the couch, sitting close together as they talked more about possibilities, dreams, the future. When Devon leaned in to kiss her, Eleanor felt that now familiar warmth spread through her, the feeling of being seen, valued, understood. The kiss deepened, and Eleanor found herself wanting more. She had dated before, had even been in relationships, but they had always felt performative somehow, part of the life she was expected to lead. With Devon, everything was different. Every touch felt real, genuine. "Stay with me tonight," Devon whispered against her lips. "Not in the guest room." Eleanor looked into his eyes and saw no pressure there, only invitation. "Yes," she said simply. Later, lying in Devon's arms, Eleanor felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. Their bodies fit together perfectly, as if they had been made for each other. For the first time in her life, Eleanor felt truly connected to another person, not because of what they could do for each other, but simply because of who they were together. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I didn't know it could feel like this." Devon's arms tightened around her. "I love you too," he said, "and I've been waiting my whole life for someone who sees the real me." Tea. Next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of Devon on the phone again. This time his voice was tense. "When did this happen?" he was asking. "No, I understand. Yes, I'll be there as soon as I can." He hung up and turned to find Eleanor watching him from the bedroom doorway. "Everything okay?" she asked. Devon ran a hand over his face. "There's been a problem at the community center site. Vandalism overnight. I need to go there." "I'll come with you," Eleanor said without hesitation. 30 minutes later, they were at the construction site. The damage was immediately visible. Spray-painted slurs across the front of the building, broken windows, construction materials scattered and damaged. Devon surveyed the scene, his expression grim. The site manager approached, looking anxious. "Mr. Marks, the police have already been here. They took photos and filed a report, but they don't have much to go on," Devon finished for him. "I understand. Let's get a cleanup crew here immediately. I want the graffiti gone today." As Devon spoke with the contractors and workers, Eleanor walked the perimeter of the building. The vandalism seemed targeted, deliberate. This wasn't random teenagers. This was a message. Near the back of the building, she found something the others had missed, a piece of paper nailed to a wooden post. She carefully removed it and read the Type D message. "Go back where you belong. This neighborhood isn't for your kind." Eleanor felt sick. She took the note to Devon, who read it silently, his jaw tight. "This isn't the first time, is it?" she asked quietly. Devon shook his head. "Third incident since we broke ground, but this is the worst." "Why didn't you tell me?" Devon sighed. "It's not your burden to carry, Eleanor." "If I love you, then it is," she replied firmly. Devon looked at her, his expression softening. "You're something else, you know that?" For the next few hours, they worked alongside the cleanup crew. Eleanor rolled up her sleeves and helped scrub away the hateful words. When photographers showed up, no doubt tipped off about the hotel heiress doing manual labor, she ignored them. By mid-afternoon, most of the visible damage had been addressed. Devon gathered the workers to thank them and reassure them about the project's future. "This is center will be built," he told them firmly. "No amount of hatred will stop what we're doing here. This community deserves this space, and we're going to make sure they get it." As the workers dispersed, Devon checked his watch. "We should head back soon if we're going to make that dinner with your father." Eleanor had completely forgotten about the board dinner. "We don't have to go," she said. "Not after this." Devon shook his head. "No, I think we should. I won't let people like this." He gestured to where the graffiti had been. "Dictate my schedule or my choices." On the drive back to the city, Eleanor watched Devon's profile. He seemed lost in thought, his expression serious. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Devon glanced at her. "I'm angry. Not just about the vandalism, but about the message behind it. The idea that because of my skin color or my background, I don't belong in certain spaces, whether it's a wealthy neighborhood or a luxury hotel." "It's hateful and wrong," Eleanor said. "Yes," Devon agreed, "but it's also exactly what your father believed when he thought I was just a janitor. He didn't use spray paint, but the message was the same. Know your place." Eleanor couldn't argue with that. "And now he wants to welcome you with open arms because your place turned out to be different than he thought." "Exactly," Devon said. "And that's almost worse. The idea that my worth as a human being is determined by my bank account." They rode in silence for a few minutes, both processing the day's events. "Maybe we shouldn't go tonight," Eleanor said finally. "Maybe it's too soon." Devon reached over and took her hand. "No, I want to go, but I want to be clear about something first." "What's that?" Eleanor asked. "I'm not interested in doing business with your father," Devon said firmly. "Not after how he's treated both of us. If that's what this dinner is really about, then we should be prepared for disappointment. His, not ours." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I understand, and I'm with you whatever happens." That evening they arrived at the exclusive restaurant where the dinner was scheduled. Charles had reserved a private dining room, and when they entered, he rose to greet them, all smiles and charm. "Devon, Eleanor," he said warmly. "Thank you for seoming. Let me introduce everyone." Around the table sat the members of the Worthing Hotel Group's board of directors, 6 men and 2 women, all impeccably dressed and watching Devon with undisguised interest. As they took their seats, Eleanor could feel the calculated atmosphere. These people, who had known her all her life, were suddenly looking at her differently, as if her relationship with Devon had transformed her from an ornamental daughter into a valuable business connection. "Before we begin," Charles said once they were all seated, "I want to formally apologize to Devon for our misunderstanding at the gala. If you had known I was wealthy, you wouldn't have had security escort me out." Devon finished for him, his voice calm but direct. "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Worthing. My value as a person shouldn't depend on my net worth." Charles's smile faltered slightly. Of course. Poor choice of words on my part. What I meant was, if I had understood the situation more clearly—" "Father," Eleanor interrupted, "let's not pretend. You treated Devon badly because you thought he was just a maintenance worker. Now you're interested in him because you know he's successful. Can we at least be honest about that?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The board members exchanged glances. "Perhaps we should order first," suggested Patricia Wilton, one of the board members. "Business can wait until after the appetizers." Throughout the meal, Charles and the board members took turns asking Devon questions about his business ventures, his investment strategies, his technology background. Each question was framed as casual conversation, but Eleanor could see the calculation behind them. They were assessing him, evaluating his potential value to their company. Devon answered politely, but offered little detail. When Charles finally brought up the possibility of collaboration between Devon's tech expertise and the Worthing hotels, Devon set down his fork and looked directly at Charles. "Mr. Worthing, I appreciate the invitation tonight, but I should be clear about something. I'm not here to discuss business opportunities." Charles's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "I don't understand. Eleanor mentioned you were interested in expanding your technology platforms." "I am," Devon acknowledged, "but not with partners who value people based solely on their financial status or social position." The table went silent. Charles's smile disappeared completely. "You're turning down a business opportunity because of a personal grudge?" he asked incredulously. "I'm declining to do business with someone whose values don't align with mine," Devon corrected him. "There's a difference." Charles looked at Eleanor. "Did you know about this? Is this some kind of setup to embarrass me in front of the board?" Before Eleanor could answer, Devon spoke again. "Eleanor didn't know what I was going to say. This is my decision, based on my observations of how you run your business and treat people." Charles's face flushed with anger. "You've been working undercover in my hotel, spying on my operation, and now you have the audacity to judge me." "I wasn't spying," Devon said calmly. "I was working. And I learned a lot about your organization from the ground up, things you probably don't even know." "Such as?" Charles challenged. "Such as the fact that your night staff hasn't had a raise in 3 years despite record profits," Devon said. "Or that your housekeeping department is chronically understaffed, forcing people to work double shifts, or that maintenance requests from the lower floors take twice as long to address as those from the premium suites." Charles waved his hand dismissively. "Those are operational details, not leadership concerns." "They're human concerns," Devon countered, "and they reflect your priorities as a leader." Eleanor watched her father's face. She had never seen anyone speak to him this way, directly, honestly, without fear of consequences. Most people either agreed with Charles Worthing or stayed silent. "I think," Charles essayed icily, "that this dinner is over." Devon nodded and stood up. "I agree. Thank you for the invitation, but Eleanor and I will be leaving now." Eleanor rose to stand beside him, acutely aware of the board members watching the scene unfold. "Eleanor," her father said sharply, "sit down. You don't have to leave with him." Eleanor looked at her father, the man who had shaped her entire life, who had planned every step of her future without ever asking what else he wanted. "Yes, I do," she said quietly, "because I love him. And because he's right." Charles stared at her in disbelief. "Love? You've known him for what? A month? This is infatuation, rebellion, not love." "It's more real than anything I've ever known," Eleanor replied, "and I'm not asking for your approval anymore." She took Devon's hand, and together they walked out of the private dining room, leaving her father and the board members in stunned silence. In the car, Eleanor let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Well, that was interesting," Devon suggested with a small smile. "I was going to say terrifying," Eleanor admitted. "I've never stood up to my father like that before." Devon reached over and squeezed her hand. "You were amazing, and for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." Eleanor looked at him, this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly and changed everything. "Did you mean what you said in there? About not doing business with my father?" Devon nodded. "Every word. Some things are more important than business opportunities." "Like what?" Eleanor asked. "Like integrity," Devon said. "Like treating people with dignity, regardless of their job title or bank balance." He paused. "Like love." Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest. "I meant what I said too, about loving you." Devon smiled, the tension of the evening melting from his face. "I know. It's written all over your face when you look at me. It has been from the beginning." As they drove through the city, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years, despite the confrontation they'd just left. For the first time, she had stood up for what she truly believed in, for what she truly wanted. The future was uncertain, but she was facing it on her own terms. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of her phone ringing. It was Rebecca, her cousin. "Have you seen it?" Rebecca asked without preamble. "Seen what?" Eleanor replied, sitting up in bed. Devon was still asleep beside her. "The article. It's everywhere. Someone at the dinner last night must have talked to the press." Eleanor felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. "What does it say?" "It's bad, Elle. They're saying Devon rejected a huge business deal with your father, that there was a scene, that you chose him over your family. Some sources are claiming Devon has a vendetta against the Worthing hotels, that he took the job to gather dirt on the company." Eleanor closed her eyes. "That's not what happened." "I know," Rebecca said gently, "but that's the story your father is pushing. You know how he operates. He never loses, at least not publicly." After hanging up, Eleanor checked the news sites. Sure enough, the story was everywhere, each version more sensationalized than the last. Devon's background was being scrutinized, his motives questioned. Some articles even hinted that he had targeted Eleanor as a way to get to her father's business. Devon stirred beside her, opening his eyes. "Morning," he said with a sleepy smile. Then, noticing her expression, "What's wrong?" Eleanor handed him her phone. "My father's version of last night is making the rounds." Devon read the headlines, his expression darkening. "I should have expected this. Your father doesn't seem like the type to accept rejection gracefully." "He's not," Eleanor confirmed. "He's trying to control the narrative again, make you look like the villain." Devon set the phone down. "Eleanor, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Your father has connections, influence. He can make things difficult for both of us." "I don't care," Eleanor said fiercely. "Let him try." Devon looked at her, his eyes serious. "Are you sure? This isn't just about nasty articles or gossip. If he decides to go all in against me, he could try to interfere with my business, my projects. The community center could lose funding. Investors might get nervous." Eleanor hadn't considered that. Her father's reach was extensive. If he wanted to cause problems for Devon, he had the means to do it. "What do we do?" she asked. Devon was quiet for a moment. "I need to protect my projects, the people who depend on them, and you need to decide how far you're willing to go in this conflict with your father." "What does that mean?" Eleanor asked, a note of worry in her voice. Devon sat up, facing her. "It means I might need to step back from the spotlight for a while, remove myself as a target, focus on securing my projects against any potential interference." Eleanor felt a cold fear creep into her heart. "Step back from us?" Devo. Hen quickly took her hands. "No, never from us. But maybe from public view. The media attention, the social circles, all of it. I built my success quietly, behind the scenes. Maybe that's where I need to return for now." Eleanor understood what he was saying. Her world, the galas, the social events, the public eye, was dangerous territory for Devon now, especially with her father actively working against him. "Where would you go?" she asked quietly. "I have a house outside the city," Devon said. "It's private, peaceful. I go there when I need to think, to plan. I was thinking of heading there for a while, just until things cool down." "And you want me to stay here?" Eleanor guessed, her heart sinking. Devon looked at her steadily. "I want you to decide what you want, Eleanor. Not what I want. Not what your father wants. What do you want?" It was the question she'd been asking herself for weeks, ever since the night she'd defended Devon at the gala. What did she, Eleanor Worthing, truly want? "I want to be with you," she said simply. "The rest is just details." Devon's expression softened. "Then come with me. Take some time away from all this." He gestured to the phone with its headlines about them. "Figure out who Eleanor Worthing really is, away from your father's shadow." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. To leave everything behind, her apartment, her social circle, her father's world, and step into the unknown with Devon. What about your work, the community center? Eleanor asked. I can manage most of it remotely, Devon said, and the site manager is capable. The project will continue. Eleanor thought about her own obligations, the charity board she sat on, the hotel events she was expected to attend, all the trappings of her life as Charles Worthing's daughter. And then she thought about the freedom of starting fresh, of building a life based on what she valued, not what was expected of her. Yes, she said finally. Let's go. They spent the day preparing. Devon made calls to his team, arranging for the community center work to continue in his absence. Eleanor packed a single suitcase with simple clothes, leaving behind the designer labels and formal wear that had defined her public image. As they were about to leave Devon's apartment, Eleanor's phone rang. It was her father. I should take this, she said to Devon. Give him a chance to hear my side directly. Devon nodded. I'll wait in the car. Eleanor, Charles said when she answered, we need to talk in person. There's damage control to be done. Damage control, Eleanor repeated. You mean the stories you've been feeding to the press? I had nothing to do with those, Charles lied smoothly. But now that they're out there, we need a strategy. Your reputation, the family name. I don't care about that anymore, Eleanor interrupted. There was a pause on the other end. What did you say? I said I don't care about my reputation or the family name, Eleanor repeated, her voice stronger. Not if it means lying about who I am or who Devon is. This isn't like you, Eleanor, Charles said, his voice hardening. That man has changed you. No, father, Eleanor replied. He just helped me find who I really am, who I've always been, underneath all your expectations and plans. And who is that? Charles asked with a hint of mockery. Someone who values truth over appearance. Someone who wants to make her own choices. Someone who can love without calculating what she gets in return. Charles was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. If you continue down this path, there will be consequences. The trust fund, your position on the boards, your apartment, all of it comes from me, from this family. It W as a threat Eleanor had been expecting, but hearing it still hurt. Are you saying you'll cut me off if I don't do what you want? I'm saying choices have consequences, Charles replied. If you choose him over your family, over everything I've built for you, then yes, you will lose those privileges. Eleanor took a deep breath. Then I guess I'll lose them because I do choose him, and more importantly, I choose myself. You're making a mistake, Charlie S. said, his voice tight with anger. When he breaks your heart or shows his true colors, don't come crying back to me. The only mistake I made, Eleanor said quietly, was letting you dictate my life for 25 years. Goodbye, father. She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. It was done. She had made her choice. When she joined Devon in the car, he could see from her expression that something had changed. Your father? He asked. Eleanor nodded. He threatened to cut me off, financially, socially, everything, if I choose you. Devon's expression grew serious. Eleanor, I would never ask you to give up your security, your inheritance. You didn't ask, Eleanor interrupted. I chose. There are some things more valuable than money or social position. Like what? Devon asked softly. Eleanor reached for his hand. Like self-respect, like love, like building a life that means something. Devon squeezed her hand. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once we drive away, your father might not leave that door open. Eleanor looked back at the city skyline, at the life she was leaving behind. A life of privilege, but also of constraints, of wealth, but not of freedom. I'm sure, she said, facing forward again. Let's go. As they drove out of the city, Eleanor felt a mixture of emotions. Grief for the relationship with her father that might never be repaired, anxiety about an uncertain future, but also a profound sense of freedom and possibility. Devon's house was about 2 hours outside the city, a modern structure of wood and glass nestled into the side of a hill, surrounded by trees and overlooking a small lake. It wasn't ostentatious like the Worthing estate, but it was beautiful in its simplicity and connection to nature. This is breathtaking, Eleanor said as they pulled up to the house. Devon smiled. My GR mother always said home should be a place that brings you peace. This does that for me. Inside, the house was warm and inviting. Comfortable furniture, shelves lined with books, large windows that brought the outside in. It felt lived in, personal in a way Eleanor's carefully decorated penthouse never had. "You can have the guest room or—" Devon hesitated. Eleanor smiled. "Or I could stay with you." That night, as they lay together in Devon's bed, the world outside felt very far away. There were no photographers, no gossip columns, no father's expectations, just the two of them, connecting in the most honest way possible. "No regrets?" Devon asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Eleanor shook her head. "Not one." The next morning, Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Devon talking on the phone in the other room. His voice was tense, serious. "When did this happen?" "I see. No, you did the right thing calling me. Yes, secure everything and call the lawyer. I'll be in touch later today." When Devon came back to the bedroom, his expression was troubled. "What's wrong?" Eleanor asked, sitting up. Devon sat on the edge of the bed. "That was my site manager at the community center. There's been another incident, worse than the vandalism. Someone set a small fire near the back entrance last night. They caught it before IT did much damage, but it's escalating," Eleanor finished for him. "Do they know who did it?" Devon shook his head. "No. The police are investigating, but without security cameras in that section, it's hard to prove anything." A terrible thought occurred to Eleanor. "You don't think my father wouldn't—" Devon took her hand. "I don't know. I'd like to think he wouldn't go that far, but the timing is suspicious." Eleanor felt sick. Could there really be behind this? Would he go so far as to damage Devon's project just to punish them? "I need to go back," Devon said, "just for a day or two, to deal with this in person." "I'll come with you," Eleanor said immediately. Devon shook his head. "It might be better if you stay here. If your father is involved, seeing you there might make things worse." Eleanor knew he was right, but she hated the idea of him facing this alone. "Promise me you'll be careful." Devon leaned in and kissed her gently. "I promise, I'll be back before you know it." After Devon left, the house felt suddenly empty. Eleanor wandered from room to room, taking in the details of Devon's private world. Family photos on the walls, books that revealed his interests, small mementos from his travels. In his office, she found a framed photograph of an older woman with Devon, same warm eyes and steady gaze. His grandmother, she guessed. Next to it was a photo of the community center land on the day they broke ground. Devon standing proudly with a shovel, surrounded by local children and community members. This was the real Devon Marks, not the maintenance worker he'd pretended to be, not the wealthy businessman her father wanted to exploit, but a man building something meaningful, creating opportunities for others. Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Are you okay? Everyone's talking about you disappearing with Devon. Your father is telling people you're taking time to reconsider your priorities." Eleanor smiled grimly. Of course, her father would try to spin the situation to make it seem like she was the one who might change her mind. "I'm fine," she texted back. "Better than fine. For the first time, I'm making my own choices." Rebecca replied immediately, "Good for you. But be careful. Your father is on the warpath. He's been meeting with some shady characters, not his usual business associates." The warning sent a chill through Eleanor. If her father was behind the incidents at the community center, what else might he do? Eleanor spent the day worrying, checking her phone constantly for updates from Devon. When he finally called that evening, she answered on the first ring. "Devon, how is everything?" "Under control for now," he said, sounding tired. "The fire damage was minimal. We've installed additional security cameras and hired guards for the site." "Any leads on who did it?" Eleanor asked. "Nothing concrete," Devon replied. "But I had a visitor today you'll find interesting." "Who?" "James Bradley," Devon said. "Your father's hand-picked suitor for you." Eleanor sat up straighter. "James? What did he want?" "Officially to apologize for his family's investment group withdrawing support from the community center," Devi explained. "Unofficially to deliver a message from your father." "What message?" Eleanor asked, though she could guess. "That this is just the beginning," Devon said quietly. "That if I don't release you from whatever hold I have. Things will get worse, not just for the community center, but for all my business interests. Eleanor felt anger rise in her chest. That's blackmail. Pretty much, Devon agreed, though he was careful to phrase it as conk-earn for your well-being and my business reputation. What did you tell him? I told him that you make your own choices, and that if Charles Worthing wants to talk to me, he should do it himself, not send messengers. Eleanor wished she could have seen James's face at that moment. He had always been her father's yes man, eager to please the powerful hotel tycoon. When are you coming back? She asked. Tomorrow morning, Devon said. I've done what I can to air for now. The rest can be handled remotely. After they hung up, Eleanor paced the house, too agitated to sit still. Her father was actually trying to sabotage Devon's projects, to hurt people who depended on the community center, all to punish her for making her own choice. It was time to take action. Eleanor went to Devon's office and turned on his computer. She needed information, leverage, something to make her father back off. As the daughter of Charles Worthing, she knew things about the hotel business that few others did, including some of her father's less ethical business practices over the years. She began making notes, documenting incidents she had witnessed or heard about. The time her father had bribed a health inspector to overlook violations at one of the hotels, the systemic underpayment of immigrant staff, the discriminatory hiring practices that had been disguised as brand standards. No knee of it was enough to truly damage her father legally, but all of it would be embarrassing if made public, especially to the high society circles where Charles Worthing's reputation was everything. Eleanor wasn't sure if she'd actually use this information, but having it made her feel less powerless. If her father wanted to play dirty, she could too. The next morning, Eleanor was in the kitchen making coffee when she heard a car approaching. Expecting Devo, she went to the front door with a smile that quickly faded when she saw not Devon's sedan, but her father's black luxury SUV coming up the driveway. Charles Worthing stepped out of the car, immaculate as always in an expensive suit. His driver remained behind the wheel, engine running. Eleanor's heart pounded as she opened the door before he could knock. "Father, this is a surprise." Charles looked her up and down, taking in her simple jeans and sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. "You look different." "What are you doing here?" Eleanor asked, not inviting him in. "How did you even find this place?" "I have resources," Charles said dismissively, "and I'm here to bring you home, away from this situation." Eleanor crossed her arms. "This situation is my choice, my life." Charles sighed. "Eleanor, this has gone far enough. Your little rebellion has made its point. It's time to come back to reality." "This is reality," Eleanor said, "more real than anything in your world." Charles's expression hardened. "I don't think you understand what's at stake. Your future, your security." "No, I don't think you understand," Eleanor interrupted. "I know what you've been doing. The vandalism at the community center, the fire, threatening Devon's business interests. It stops now." Charles didn't deny it, which told Eleanor everything she needed to key now. "Sometimes business requires a pressure," he said instead. "This isn't business," Eleanor said angrily. "This is you trying to control me like you always have." "I'm trying to protect you," Charles snapped, "from a man who's using you to get to me, to my hotels." "Devon turned down your business offer," Eleanor reminded him. "He wants nothing to do with your hotels." "A negotiation tactic," Charles insisted. "Everyone has a price." Eleanor shook her head sadly. "That's the difference between you and Devon. You think everything and everyone can be bought. He knows some things are worth more than money." Charles's face flushed with anger. "This fantasy won't last, Eleanor. When the novelty wears off, when you realize what you've thrown away, I'll still have my integrity," Eleanor finished for him, "and someone who loves me for who I am, not what I represent." They stood facing each other, father and daughter, the gulf between them wider than ever. "I have information," Eleanor said finally, "about your business practices. Things the board would find very interesting. Things the press would love to report on." Charles's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't." "I don't want to," Eleanor said honestly. "But if you don't stop targeting Devon and his projects, I will. Consider it insurance." "You would betray your own family?" Charles asked incredulously. You betrayed me first, Eleanor replied, when you decided your control over my life was more important than my happiness. For the first time, Eleanor saw something new in her father's eyes. Not anger or disappointment, but fear. Fear of losing his power, his control, his carefully constructed image. Now leave, Eleanor said firmly, and don't come back unless you're ready to accept my choices and respect the man I love. Charles stared at her for a long moment, as if seeing her for the first time. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. Eleanor watched as the SUV disappeared down the driveway, her heart pounding. She had stood her ground. She had faced her father without backing down. When Devon's car appeared 20 minutes later, Eleanor ran to meet him, throwing herself into his arms as soon as he stepped out. Whoa, Devon said, holding her tight. Everything okay? My father was here, Eleanor said against his chest. Devon pulled back to look at her face. What? When? What happened? Eleanor told him about the confrontation, about her suspicions confirmed, about the leverage she'd threatened to use. You didn't have to do that, Devon said. I can handle your father. We can handle him together, Eleanor corrected him. That's what partners do. Devon smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Partners, huh? Yes, Eleanor said firmly. If you'll have me. Devon's answer was a kiss that told her everything she needed to know. That night, as they sat on the deck overlooking the lake, Eleanor felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. The path forward wasn't clear yet. Her father might back off, or he might escalate. Devon's projects might face more challenges. Her own future was uncertain without the safety net of family wealth and connections. But for the first time, the uncertain didn't frighten her. With Devon beside her, she felt strong enough to face whatever came next. What are you thinking about? Devon asked, his arm around her shoulders. Eleanor leaned into him. The future. It's kind of a blank page now. Blank pages can be scary, Devon acknowledged, but they're also full of possibility. Eleanor smiled. I like that. A page we can write together. As the sun set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, Eleanor thought about how far she had come from that night at the hotel gala. She had lost her father's approval, her social standing, possibly her inheritance, but she had found something far more valuable, herself. And looking at Devon beside her, she knew she had found something else too, someone who saw her, truly saw her, when everyone else had only seen what they wanted to see. 3 weeks had passed since Eleanor confronted her father. She and Devon had settled into a peaceful routine at the lake house. Mornings spent working remotely, afternoons exploring the surrounding woods or kayaking on the lake, evenings cooking together and talking about everything and nothing. For Eleanor, it was a completely different life than the one she had known in the city. There were no galas to attend, no appearances to make, no image to maintain. For the first time, she could just be herself. Devon had set up a small space for her in one of the spare bedrooms, where she had begun researching art programs for underprivileged youth, something she was considering developing for the community center. I've never seen you this focused, Devon commented one morning, bringing her a cup of coffee. You've been at it for hours. Eleanor looked up from her laptop and smiled. Because it matters. It's not just sitting on a charity board to look good in the society pages. These programs could actually make a difference for kids who otherwise might never get exposed to art. Devon leaned down and kissed the top of her head. You're amazing, you know that? Eleanor caught his hand and squeezed it. I'm just finding my way, thanks to you. That afternoon, Eleanor's phone rang with a call from Rebecca. How's life in hiding? Her cousin asked teasingly. Hardly hiding, Eleanor replied with a laugh. Just living quietly. How are the Ings in the city? Interesting, Rebecca said. Your father's been unusually subdued lately. No more trash-talking Devon to anyone who will listen. And get this, the vandalism at Devon's community center has mysteriously stopped. Eleanor felt a wave of relief. Perhaps her confrontation with her father had actually worked. There's something else, Rebecca continued. James Bradley has been telling people that your father approached him about buying out one of Devon's tech startups, the one that creates educational software for low-income schools. Eleanor frowned. Buy it out. Why would my father want that? No idea, Rebecca said, but it doesn't sound like his usual type of investment. After they hung up, Eleanor immediately called Devon, who was in the city for the day, checking on the community center's progress. Hey, she said when he answered. Rebecca just told me something strange. Apparently my father is interested in buying one of your startups, the educational software one. There was a pause on the other end. That's unexpected. Do you think it's another angle of attack? Eleanor asked worriedly. Try to take control of your company, then dismantle it. It's possible, Devon admitted. But that particular startup isn't very profitable yet. It's more of a social enterprise than a moneymaker, not his usual target. Nothing about my father's behavior has been usual lately, Eleanor Poe hinted out. Just be careful, okay? Always, Devon promised. I'll be home in a few hours. We can talk more then. After they hung up, Eleanor couldn't shake her uneasiness. What was her father planning now? She tried to focus on her research, but her mind kept wandering back to the question. Eventually, she decided to call the one person who might have insight into Charles Worthing's mind. Her mother's oldest friend, Margaret Chen. Margaret had been her mother's college roommate and had remained close to the family even after Eleanor's mother died when Eleanor was 12. She was one of the few people who could speak honestly to Charles and get away with it. Eleanor, darling, Margaret answered warmly. I was hoping you'd call eventually. How are you? I'm good, Margaret. Really good, actually, Eleanor said. But I'm worried about my father. He seems to be up to something. Margaret sighed. Your father is always up to something. But yes, he's been acting strangely lately. Since your confrontation at the lake house, he's been reflective. Not a word I often associate with Charles Worthing. Eleanor was surprised. You know about that? He told me himself, Margaret said. Over dinner last week. I think you shook him, Eleanor. For the first time, he's realizing he can't control everything. Especially not you. And this interest in Devon's educational software company, Eleanor asked. Ah, that, Margaret said. I suggested that, actually. You did? Why? Because your father needs a way to save face while making amends, Margaret explained. He won't admit he was wrong. That's not who Charles is. But he might be willing to support something that matters to you and Devon in his own way. Eleanor was skeptical. It doesn't sound like my father. People can surprise you, Margaret said softly, especially when they're faced with losing someone they love. After they hung up, Eleanor sat quietly, thinking about what Margaret had said. Could her father actually be trying in his own stubborn way to make amends? When Devon returned that evening, they discussed it over dinner. It could be genuine, Devon acknowledged, or it could be another way to try to get close to us, gain information, find weaknesses. What do you think we should do? Eleanor asked. Devon considered the question. If he's serious about investing in the educational software, it would help a lot of kids. The company needs capital to expand into more school districts. But can we trust him? Eleanor asked. Devon reached across the table and took her hand. Trust has to start somewhere. Maybe this is his way of extending an olive branch. The next morning, Eleanor called her father's office. His assistant put her through immediately. Eleanor, Charles said, his voice carefully neutral. I didn't expect to hear from you. I hear you're interested in Devon's educational software company, Eleanor said, getting straight to the point. I'm exploring options, Charles replied cautiously. It has potential for growth in an emerging market. Eleanor almost smiled at the typical business language, her father's comfort zone. Why that company specifically, she pressed. It's not your usual type of investment. There was a pause on the other end. Perhaps I'm diversifying my portfolio, Charles said finally. Father, Eleanor said firmly, if this is some kind of strategy to get to Devon or me, it's not, Charles interrupted. He hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. It's a business decision with additional considerations. Eleanor translated in her head. It's as close to an apology as he could manage. Devon might be open to discussing it, she said, but it would have to be legitimate with no strings attached. Of course, Charles replied quickly. Purely business. but they both knew it was more than that. 2 days later, Devon and Eleanor drove back to the city for a meeting with Charles at the Worthing Group's corporate headquarters. Eleanor felt strange walking into the building she had once considered a second home. Now it felt foreign, like visiting a place from someone else's life. Charles's assistant showed them directly to the conference room, where Charles waited with a small team of executives. Eleanor noticed James Bradley was not among them. "Mr. Marks, Eleanor," Charles greeted them formally. "Thank you for coming." The meeting proceeded with professional detachment as Charles's team presented their proposal for investing in Devon's educational software company. The terms were surprisingly favorable: capital investment with minimal control requirements, a commitment to the company's social mission, and resources to expand into 50 more school districts within a year. Devon asked pointed questions, clearly not willing to accept the offer without thoroughly vetting it. Eleanor watched her father respond with uncharacteristic patience, answering each concern without dismissing it. When the formal presentation ended, Charles dismissed his team, leaving just the three of them in the conference room. An awkward silence fell. "The terms are fair," Devon said finally. "Better than fair, actually." Charles nodded. "I researched the market carefully. This type of educational technology has significant growth potential, especially with the right backing." Again, business language as a shield for personal feelings. Eleanor had grown up with this, but now she could see it clearly for what it was: her father's way of keeping emotional distance. "Why are you really doing this, father?" Eleanor asked directly. Charles looked uncomfortable. "As I said, it's a sound investment." "No," Eleanor interrupted. "The truth, for once." Charles looked at her for a long moment, then at Devon, then back to her. The mask of the powerful businessman slipped just slightly. "Because I don't want to lose my daughter completely," he said quietly. And this seemed like a way to bridge the gap. It was perhaps the most honest thing her father had ever said to her. Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes. "It's a start," she acknowledged. Devon extended his hand across the table. "I'm willing to work with you, Mr. Worthing, for the sake of the children who will benefit from this program. And," he glanced at Eleanor, "for other reasons as well." Charles shook Devon's hand firmly. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, or a full reconciliate, but it was a beginning. After the meeting, as they rode the elevator down to the lobby, Devon took Eleanor's hand. "You okay?" Eleanor nodded. "I think so. I never expected him to bend even that much." "People can surprise you," Devon said, echoing Margaret's words, "especially when they have a good reason to change." As they walked through the lobby, Eleanor noticed several employees watching them curiously. Once, that would have bothered her, being too subject of gossip and speculation. Now she found she didn't care what they thought. The opinions that mattered to her couldn't be found in this building. Outside, the city bustled around them, everyone rushing somewhere important. Eleanor remembered how that felt. The constant pressure to be somewhere, do something, maintain appearances. "Do you miss it?" Devon asked, as if reading her thoughts. "This life?" Eleanor looked around at the gleaming skyscrapers, the designer boutiques, the people dressed to impress. "Parts of it," she admitted, "but not enough to go back to who I was before." Devon smiled. "Good, because I like who you are now." They spent the day in the city, checking on the community center's progress. The damage from the fire had been fully repaired, and construction was moving forward on schedule. The center was set to open in just 2 months. "We should think about where we want to live," Devon said as they toured the facility. "After the center opens, the lake house is great, but it's a long commute if we're both working here regularly." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. "You want us to live together? Permanently?" Devon's expression was serious. "I want more than that, Eleanor. I want a life with you, a future." Eleanor felt her heart racing. "Are you?" Devon smiled. "Not proposing, not yet, but letting you know that's where I see it going. If you want that too." Eleanor didn't hesitate. "I do. I absolutely do." As they walked through the community center, Devon introduced Eleanor to the staff and contractors. Everyone greeted her warmly, not as Charles Worthing's daughter, but as Devon's partner and a valued contributor to the project. In one of the classrooms, a group of local children had been invited to try out some of the educational programs that would be offered. Eleanor watched as Devon sat down with them, listening to their ideas and suggestions with genuine interest. This was the man she loved, not because of his wealth or status, but because of his heart, his integrity, his vision for making the world better. That evening, they had dinner at a small restaurant where no one recognized them or cared who they were. The anonymity was refreshing. "I've been thinking," Eleanor said as they ate, "about what I want to do next." "Tiki art programs?" Devon asked. Eleanor nodded. "Yes, but more than that. I've been talking with some gallery owners I know, and there's an opportunity to create a permanent exhibition space at the community center for local artists from underrepresented backgrounds." Devon looked at her with pride. "That sounds perfect for you." "It would combine my knowledge of art with something meaningful," Eleanor continued, her excitement growing, "and I could use some of my connections in the art world for good, instead of just social climbing." "Have you thought about what this means financially?" Devon asked gently. "You'd be stepping away from your family business, your inheritance potentially." Eleanor had thought about it. "I have some money of my own, not Worthing money, but investments my mother left specifically to me. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to be independent." Devon reached across the table and to okay her hand. "You know I have more than enough for both of us, right? You don't have to worry about money." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I know, but I want to contribute, to build something that's mine. Not because I need to financially, but because I need to for me." Devon's smile was full of understanding. "That's one of the things I love most about you, Eleanor Worthing. Your determination to stand on your own." After dinner, they walked through the city hand in hand. It was a beautiful spring evening, the kind that made New York feel magical. As they passed the Worthing Grand Hotel, Eleanor paused, looking up at the elegant facade. "This used to be my whole world," she said softly. Devon followed her gaze. "And now?" Eleanor turned to him, her eyes clear and certain. "Now it's just a building. A beautiful one, but just a building." They continued walking, the city lights twinkling around them. Eleanor thought about how much had changed in such a short time. Just a few months ago, she had been the perfect hotel heiress, living a life mapped out by her father, surrounded by people who valued her name more than herself. Now here she was, walking the same streets but as a completely different person. A woman who had found her voice, her purpose, and most importantly, love that saw her for who she truly was. 2 months later, the day of the community center's grand opening arrived. The weather was perfect. Warm sunshine, clear blue skies. A crowd had gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local families, community leaders, press, and even some of Devon's business associates. Eleanor stood proudly at Devon's side as he gave a speech about opportunity, community, and creating spaces where everyone belonged. The art exhibition she had organized in one wing of the center was ready for visitors, featuring works by talented artists from the neighborhood who had never had gallery representation before. As Devon prepared to cut the ribbon, Eleanor scanned the crowd. To her surprise, she spotted her father standing quietly at the back, dressed more casually than she had ever seen him in public, watching without drawing attention to himself. When the ribbon was cut and the crowd began to move inside, Eleanor made her way to him. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. Charles looked slightly uncomfortable. "I wanted to see what all this meant to you, to understand." Eleanor was touched by the effort. It wasn't an apology or a complete change of heart, but it was something. An attempt to step into her world instead of demanding she return to his. "Would you like a tour?" she offered. Charles nodded. "I would." Eleanor led her father through the center, showing him the classrooms, the technology lab, the recreation space years, and finally, the art exhibition she had curated. "You did all this?" Charles asked, looking at the professionally displayed artwork and detailed artist biographies. "I did," Eleanor said with pride. "These artists have incredible talent, but no access to the traditional art world. Now they have a chance to be seen." Charles studied a powerful painting by a young artist from the neighborhood. "It's good," he said, sounding genuinely impressed. "Very good." "She's 17, Eleanor told him, "and she's never had a formal art lesson. Imagine what she could do with proper training and support." Charles looked at his daughter with new eyes. "You've found your calling." It wasn't a question, but Eleanor answered anyway. "I think I have." They continued walking, the awkwardness between them slowly easing. At one point, Charles asked, "Are you happy, Eleanor? Truly happy?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Yes, more than I ever was before." Charles nodded, accepting this truth even if he didn't fully understand it. "That's what your mother would have wanted for you. She always said you had her spirit. Too much for the life I had planned." The mention of her mother, something Charles rarely did, brought tears to Eleanor's eyes. "I wish she could see this." "She would be proud," Charles said softly. "As am I, in my own way." It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was a start. A new understanding between father and daughter that allowed them both to move forward without completely severing the past. Later, as the event continued, Eleanor found Devon talking with a group of excited children about the computer lab. When he saw her, he excused himself and came to her side. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her emotional expression. "Better than okay," Eleanor said. "My father came. We talked, really talked. It was good." Devon smiled. "I'm glad. Family is important, even when it's complicated." "He's trying," Eleanor said, "in his own way, and so am I." As the day wound down, Eleanor found herself standing in the center's entrance hall, watching as families explored the new facilities. Devon was showing a group of teenagers the music studio, his face animated as he explained the equipment. This was what mattered, she realized. Not the social standing, not the family name, not the wealth, but creating something meaningful, making a difference in real people's lives. A month later, Eleanor moved the last of her things from her penthouse apartment to the new home she and Devon had bought together, a spacious loft in a converted warehouse not far from the community center. It was nothing like the luxury high-rise she had lived in before, but it felt more like home already. Devon was waiting for her, champagne and takeout dinner, ready to celebrate their first official night living together. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "To seeing and being seen," Eleanor added, clinking her glass against his. After dinner, they sat on their small balcony, looking out at the city lights. Devon seemed unusually quiet, almost nervous. "Everything okay?" Eleanor asked. Devon took a deep breath. "I was going to wait, make some grand gesture, but that's not really us, is it?" Eleanor looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" Devon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "We've never been about appearances or showing off. We've been about truth from the beginning." Eleanor's heart began to race as he opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "Eleanor Worthing," Devon said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You saw me when the world looked right through me. You defended me when it cost you everything. You chose me when it wasn't the easy path. And I love you for that, and so much more." He took the ring from the box. "Will you marry me? Not because it makes sense on paper or because it's what's expected, but because we see each other, really see each other when no one else does." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times yes." As Devon slipped the ring onto her finger, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that moment in the hotel ballroom when she had spoken up for a man she thought had nothing, to this moment of committing to a future with a man who had shown her everything she could be. "What are you thinking?" Devon asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Eleanor smiled, looking down at the ring that symbolized not just their love, but the truth they had found together. "I'm thinking about how sometimes people see only what they expect to see," she said. "My father saw you as just a janitor. The investors saw you as beneath them. Even I didn't see the whole truth at first." Devon nodded. "And now?" Eleanor leaned forward and kissed him softly. "Now I see you, all of you, and you see me, not the hotel heiress, not Charles Worthing's daughter, Just Eleanor, and that's everything. Devon pulled her close, and as they held each other on their balcony with the city spread out before them, Eleanor knew that this was what real love was, not the fairy tale the gossip columns had tried to make of their story, not the business arrangement her father had wanted, but this. Two people who had found in each other something more than what the world saw. They had found the truth. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in a small dressing room at a boutique hotel near the beach, where she and Devon would be married in less than an hour. She had chosen a simple white dress, elegant but unfussy, much like the small ceremony they had planned with just 50 guests. Rebecca helped adjust her veil. "You look beautiful, Elle, and happy, really happy." Eleanor smiled at her reflection. "I am happy, happier than I ever thought possible." There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Eleanor called, expecting the wedding planner. Instead, her father entered, looking characteristically uncertain in his formal suit. "Dad?" Eleanor said, surprised. They had been slowly rebuilding their relationship over the past months, but there had still been tension about the wedding. Until last week, Eleanor hadn't been sure he would even attend. "You look beautiful," Charles said, his voice thick with emotion. "Like your mother." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." Rebecca discreetly slipped out of the room, leaving Father R and daughter alone. "I have something for you," Charles said, pulling a small blue velvet box from his pocket. "It was your mother's." He opened it to reveal a delicate pearl bracelet. "She wore this on our wedding day. She always wanted you to have it when the time came." Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she touched the pearls. "It's beautiful." "May I?" Charles asked, and when Eleanor nodded, he carefully fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "Il est honor," he said, his usual commanding tone replaced with something softer. "I know I haven't been supportive of your choices. I thought I knew what was best for you, what would make you happy." "And now?" Eleanor asked. Charles looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. "Now I see that you know your own heart better than I ever could. Devon is a good man, different than what I imagined for you, but right for you." It wasn't a grand apology or a complete transformation, but coming from Charles Worthing, it was monumental. Eleanor hugged her father tightly. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me." Charles cleared his throat, emotion threatening to overcome his usual reserve. "Your young man is waiting. May I walk you down the aisle?" Eleanor smiled through her tears. "I would love that." The ceremony was everything Eleanor and Devon had wanted, intimate, meaningful, focus said on their commitment rather than spectacle. They exchanged vows on a cliff overlooking the ocean, surrounded only by people who truly cared about them. Devon's community center colleagues stood on one side, Eleanor's remaining true friends and family on the other. Charles Worthing stood beside Margaret Chen, watching with a complex mixture of emotions as his daughter married a man he had once considered beneath her notice. "I, Devon, take you, Eleanor," Devon said, his voice strong and clear, "not for what others see when they look at you, but for who you truly are, brave, compassionate, and real. I promise to see you, support you, and love you for all of our days." Eleanor squeezed his hands, her heart so full she could barely speak. "I, Eleanor, take you, Devon, the man who taught me what truly matters in life. You saw me when I was hiding behind masks, and you loved me enough to show me how to be free. I promise to see you, stand by you, and love you, today and always." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, applause and cheers erupted from their guests. Eleanor caught her father's eye over Devon's shoulder and saw something she had rarely seen before: pride, untainted by expectations or conditions. The reception was held in a restored barn near the beach, decorated simply with white lights and wildflowers. There was none of the opulence of Worthing even, but it was warm, joyful, and genuine, like the love it celebrated. As the evening progressed, Eleanor found herself sitting beside her father at a quiet moment. "Happy?" he asked. Eleanor nodded, watching Devon laughing with a group of children from the community center who had been invited to the reception. "Completely." Charles followed her gaze. "He's built something meaningful with that center, something that will last. We both have, Eleanor said. The art program is expanding to 3 more locations next year. Charles looked at his daughter with newfound respect. You've found your purpose. I have, Eleanor agreed, but more importantly, I found myself. Later, as she and Devon danced under the stars, Eleanor felt a sense of completion she had never known before. The journey that had begun that night at the hotel gala had led her here, to a life she had chosen, with a man who loved her for exactly who she was. "What are you thinking, Mrs. Marks?" Devon asked, holding her close. Eleanor smiled at her new name, a choice she had made freely, not out of rejection of her past, but as an embrace of her future. "I'm thinking about the night we met," she said. "How everything changed because you were fixing an air vent and I happened to notice." Devon chuckled. "Fate works in strange ways." "It wasn't fate," Eleanor said thoughtfully. "It was choice. I chose to see you. You chose to let me in. We both chose this path, even when it wasn't easy." Devon kissed her softly, "And I'd choose it again every time." As the celebration continued around them, Eleanor thought about the journey ahead. There would be challenges, of course. Her relationship with her father would continue to evolve. Devon's projects would face obstacles. Their life together would have its difficult moments. But they would face it all together, with clear eyes and open hearts. They had found in each other something rare and precious, the ability to see beyond surfaces, beyond expectations, beyond what the world thought they should be. They had found the truth in each other, and that was more than enough. In the years that followed, Eleanor and Devon built a life together that defied the expectations of the world they had come from. The community center thrived, becoming a model for similar art projects in other cities. Eleanor's art program discovered and nurtured talent that might otherwise have gone unseen, changing the landscape of the art world in small but significant ways. Charles Worthing never fully abandoned his businesslike approach to life, but he did develop a grudging respect for his son-in-law and a deeper understanding of his daughter. When Eleanor and Devon's first child was born, a daughter they named Grace after Devon's grandmother, Charles became a doting grandfather who told stories about the hotel business, but also about the importance of seeing people for who they truly were. And through it all, Devon and Eleanor remained each other's anchors, their love deepening with each passing year. They had begun their journey when Eleanor defended a man she thought had nothing. They continued it by building something together that was worth more than all the wealth and status they had left behind. They had seen each other when the world saw only what it expected to see. And in that seeing they had found everything: